wasn't that long ago that recruiting seemed to discover consumer marketing. I myself remember teaching a room full of talent acquisition leaders only 8 years ago about the magic of the recruiting funnel, a derivation of the consumer funnel. Now, since then, recruiting has completely embraced consumer marketing. From CRMs to programmatic, if consumers doing it, it must be good, right? Maybe not. In this, the 7th episode of the Brand Plan, Marcus and I are going to break down exactly where consumer marketing has a lot to offer us on the recruiting and employer brand side, and where it perhaps gets in the way. Hey, Marcus.
Hey, James, how's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. Keeping busy. I suspect you're pretty busy too.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to be the kind of mid-year period when people suddenly start going, hey, what are we going to achieve next year? And starting to think about objectives for the next calendar year already. It
Yeah.
seems a long way off.
I feel like the conversations I'm having are people going, oh, the year's halfway over and I didn't actually get the stuff done I planned to. Well, time's a wasting.
Absolutely. I was saying, actually, I really wanted to do a project in kind of 2019 of everyone's 2020 vision document. And let's see how many people were actually anywhere close to it. I suspect it would have been a very small number, but, you know.
Oh, yeah, not even close. Because no one saw what was about to hit them. No one. So this week I want to talk about. We've touched on this before, but it's such an interesting kind of rich topic, and I think it's very easy to check a box. It's easy to say it and walk away from it. I think we need to dive into the deep meaning of this idea that consumer branding and recruitment marketing, employer branding aren't just different. They're like capital D different. They have so different of approach. Their outcomes are different. Their metrics are different. The materials, all of it is so different, and it's very easy to say, oh yeah, they're a little different. And I get to roll out my favorite line that employer branding is all about recruiting. In fact, it's all about quality, not quantity, whereas all of consumer marketing is about quantity. But let's get into the nitty gritty of why. Let's get beyond the poster and the motivational line. Let's get into why doesn't it work? I mean, you'd think consumer marketing has all the cool tools. It has all the cool thinking, right? They get paid all the big bucks. We should just do what they do, right? And now is when you're going to tell me how insane that is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to jump into what the inferiority complex and go, oh, we're just doing what marketing do, but with less money.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of truth to that, of course, is that typically we do have a smaller budget, especially for those of you who are working for kind of consumer brands. You've definitely got a smaller amount of money, but you are actually trying to do something different as well. And I think you shouldn't just get fixated on the fact of, oh, we've got less money than them and the person in charge of employer brand is not as important as the person in charge of brand. Actually, you are trying to achieve fundamentally different things as well. And it can get messy because your audiences overlap. But what you're trying to achieve with those audiences is just so different that some things will translate well and some things don't translate well. And it's partly a problem of our own making. We stole all their jargon. And so now we think we ought to steal all of their tools and all of their approaches and all of their diagrams and things as well. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And it just requires, sometimes you just need to stop and take a step back and go, yeah, but is that helping? Is that actually doing the thing that I need to do? Or am I just taking it?
Yeah. I liken it to sometimes. Now, to me, employer branders are of two kind of sources, right? Their origin stories are either I'm a recruiter and I wasn't a good recruiter and I found this space where I could do a different kind of recruiting thinking, which is great. And there are people who are marketers who come over thinking it's a different kind of marketing and I like that. Now, for me, you're right. The marketers bring over all of the baggage that comes from the 4 Ps or the 5 Ps or the 17 Ps, however many Ps there are anymore. I don't know. It's been a while since
I think they're up to 23 now. It's
good for them. They're good for that. At some point, they have to run out. But anyway, but you look at recruiters who, especially in organizations where they don't have an established employer brand function, they just designate a recruiter, say, you're now in charge of the employer brand. It's a bit of a cargo cult, right? They look at from the outside what marketing does and how they do it and say, oh, it's supposed to be like that, and they just do it without the thinking behind it. Then that's okay because the marketing side does it because that's how they've been trained. It's different sins almost, but resulting in the same kind of problems.
Absolutely. But I think there's a few things that we've already alluded to when we chatted about this before, but I think we could go deeper into about the objectives are fundamentally different, and that changes all sorts of things. But also for most of you watching, depends which country you're in, or those of you listening, the law is different. Actually, your legal responsibilities in terms of diversity and inclusion and not discriminating are different
Yeah.
to when you're doing consumer marketing, where you don't have those kind of constraints. But also, closely attached to that are the moral dimensions of what you are doing, are also very, very different compared to when you're selling a product where that's not as big an issue. Who you're selling it to isn't a moral question.
Yeah.
Whereas who you're selling jobs to is a moral question, and you have bigger responsibilities there. And I think that's where you have to be a little bit careful about the approaches you're going to bring. Doesn't mean you can't use those approaches, but does mean you might need to change them a bit. You might need to rethink them a bit. You might need to intervene and just retool them to do what you need them to do.
So let's get specific, because I think it's very easy to talk in this kind of
Yeah.
abstract kind of terms, and everybody's probably already sick of hearing this and have already found another, interesting podcast. But presuming they have not, and hopefully they have not, let's get a little deeper. Let's start with the goals. Now, obviously,
Yes.
consumer marketing, the goal is to create a lead, create a sale. And employer brand, obviously, he says, knowing that tone of voice that says, haha, maybe there's some wiggle room here, that obviously our job is to get an applicant and get the hire.
Yeah.
What are the goals really?
So I think there's an interesting thing that happens when you look at what's good and what everyone's definition of, well, that was a good campaign. Mm-hmm. I've been a judge at like employer branding awards and recruitment advertising awards, and you'll get a submission that says this campaign was really successful. It achieved 3 times the applicants of the last campaign, and you go, yeah, but was that good? Was that a good thing? It depends who those applicants are, whether that's a good thing or not. I think this is the biggest fundamental difference when you look at the difference between consumer advertising and recruitment advertising is you can't tell the difference between a good click and a bad click. Whereas in consumer advertising, there's no such thing as a bad click. A click is a click is a click is good, and the person who clicks buy, it doesn't matter who they are. Whereas that's not the case in recruitment advertising, and a campaign that gets 1 good click is better than a campaign that gets 10 bad clicks.
Yeah.
But you can't tell the difference between those till way down the line. And that totally changes all sorts of approaches, all sorts of things you might do don't work if you don't know whether a click is good or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to sales, to marketing, every dollar is a good dollar. It doesn't,
Exactly.
right? Yes, the answer is yes, I will take that sale. To recruiting, to hiring, every applicant is not the same. And, taking a step further, every click is not the same. And
Completely.
You're talking about, whether you're selling chocolate bars or jet engines, it doesn't matter if it's a long tail process or short tail process. Ultimately, if the check clears, the answer is yes. In hiring, even if you're hiring entry-level people, even if you're hiring 20 entry-level people and you're taking kind of a flyer on a few of them, it's still about you have a limited quantity and you're trying to maximize what you're bringing in. And to me, that the challenge I've always had with it is everybody wants a metric. Everybody wants a KPI. Everybody wants a thing they can point to and say, we did that, therefore we're doing a great job. And employer branding, honestly, in fact, as I listen to other professional branders, consumer branders, even they struggle with this idea, is that most of the quote unquote branding and marketing metrics are geared towards direct marketing. Did it push them over the line? Did it take a browser and convert them into a buyer? And that's great, but when you converting a browser into an applicant is not the same value. And it's very hard to say what is a metric that we care about, especially since there are no hard and fast rules about what is a quality applicant, which to me, the second someone figures that out, we're golden, right? That answers and it creates a foundation of, is this good or not, upon which we can build so much good work.
Absolutely. And I guess the game for this is going to be harder for some of you than for others. If you're doing mass hiring, if you're hiring for the military or high turnover roles in retail or hospitality, then okay, quantity starts to become a good thing. And okay, we can move more towards those consumer approaches. Because actually now we need quantity and we need an ongoing quantity, and it becomes a bit more similar. But if you're not doing that kind of hiring, if you're doing something, I don't know, in professional services where it's all about quality and actually we want fewer, better people, actually the number of applications can almost be a bad thing. Like if there's going to be a Goldilocks point of the right amount of applications. Fewer than that is bad because you haven't got enough to shortlist, but more than that is bad because you've now got too many people to process and too many people to get through. And with an awful lot of clients, I've done work which is actually more about trying to bring that number down.
Yeah.
And how do we help people who are not appropriate self-select out? Well, okay, that's a really sensible thing to do, but it now means we can't start measuring applications as a good metric because we're actively trying to lower that. We're going to do some interventions, some self-assessment things on their website that are designed to lower that number. So it's bonkers if we're still using that as our metric. So I think this is what you need to have a look at your own kind of hiring objectives and go, how similar are my objectives to a marketeer's objectives? If you are playing the volume game, okay, you might be able to take rather more of their approaches. If you're not playing the volume game, an awful lot of the stuff that they do is predicated on the idea of driving volumes. And if you're not doing that, it's not going to be very useful to you.
Yeah, and I love it when recruiting teams invariably get in a bind, right? There's always some team suddenly has to double in size, and that's always a good thing. Congratulations, that's wonderful. But the recruiter says, we didn't get enough applicants. The go-to is never, we need to rewrite the job posting so we're more specific about who we actually want. The answer is always cast a wider net, take off 4 bullets and put ad spend out so we can get more people to click the button. And you're like, that actually doesn't solve your problem. The thing is that when there's a fear-based response to, we're not filling the pipeline like we wanted, quick, make it bigger, just stuff it like a Christmas goose with more people who may not be qualified.
Yeah, and I guess this is where, it depends who's listening to this podcast, where your responsibilities lie. Some of you can't see down that funnel. Some of you are only tasked with throwing stuff into the top of the funnel, and it's very, very difficult for you to see what happens after that point. Whereas others of you are much more connected with whoever is handling that response. At smaller organizations, you might be the person doing that as well. Okay, you now have a much better visibility of, is the kind of stuff I'm throwing in at the top of this of the right type of people that I want? As well as are those people then making it through the process? Okay, I'm optimizing this, I am narrowing my funnel, which means I'm finding better people to put in the top of it in the first place. But an awful lot of organizations, those things are very, very disjointed, and they're not necessarily in the same department, the teams doing those things, in which case it becomes very difficult to do anything other than throw more in the top of the hopper and see what comes through out the other end.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, that's one of my core arguments as to why I caution people from saying, "Oh, employer brand should always be in marketing." Yes and no. I mean, there's a case to be made in either side, and that's our other grenade, right? That's the conversation that starts a fight without any 3 employer branders. Where should employer brand live? But if you're disconnected from the recruiters who are the front line of, am I getting good applicants or not? And it's completely anecdotal. It's completely kind of qualitative. There's no good metric for it. But if the recruiters start to say things like, yeah, we got more applicants, but there's no better applicants, that's when you know you're having a problem. And if you're living in marketing, that message may take a long time to get to you so you can make an adjustment.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's the most important single difference between what we do and what marketing do. I mean, I think there are other sort of differences as well that influence the way the whole process works and the whole way it behaves. I mean, I sometimes, talk to clients about, most of the time, a recruitment advertising thing starts with a problem. It starts with, oh, someone's quit. Oh no, we need to hire some people. It starts in a very negative place of, we are trying to fix a problem. Whereas consumer marketing sometimes starts there, but usually starts in a, yay, we've got a new product, we've got a new service. It's like there's a kind of excitement and positivity about the activity that is about to take place. Yay, totally, we have something to tell the world. Or, yes, we have 100,000 units of this to sell, but it starts in kind of quite a positive place. Whereas an awful lot of recruitment starts with a crisis. It starts with, someone's gone, we need a new team to do X. Something has broken, we need to hire a bunch of people to come and fix it. And it starts in quite a negative place. And but it's easy in that situation to panic, right? Because it started in a negative place. You can charge into it and kind of rush in with, the best of intentions, but kind of end up doing something which, in retrospect, you sit down and go, oh, we shouldn't have done that, should we? But because it started in this kind of point of crisis, particularly for the hiring manager, it's a point of crisis for them very often. Someone's just quit my team. Oh no. Not always. Sometimes it's, yay, I've won a project and I need to staff up, and they might be quite positive about that. But very often it isn't that way, and it starts in this negative place.